So hi, welcome to you all, and thank you for being here this last day. So you might wonder, what on earth do Teletubbies have to do with generative AI?
Nice.
They will help us solve an urgent problem we face as educators today. How do we support our students in becoming critical information problem solvers? Because whether we will benefit or not from AI depends largely on the critical information problem-solving competence of our students. My name is Josien Boetje from University of Applied Sciences in Utrecht, the Netherlands, and I also work at the Open University of the Netherlands. And today, together, we'll try to open that black box in the middle. Let's see what is inside. Because currently, the cognitive processes that students go through when solving information problems using generative AI are still a black box. The theoretical models we have so far were simply not built for this reality, such as the IPSI model was built for solving information problems using the internet, was 2009. So we really need new theory. So that's why we developed a new process decomposition of the information problem-solving process. And that's where DIPSI comes in. We thank DIPSI for the name, because it's called the Digital Information Problem-Solving Model. You don't hear AI there, because we think we need to integrate existing theories and then see, okay, what does AI change in them? But it should encompass either information problem-solving using internet, regular sources, or AI. In the basis, it's not different, but we will see there will be some new layer of cognitive activities that are demanded right now. So, information problem solving, what's it all about? Probably you recognize some of the terms here. You need to know, what's my problem, what information do I need? You will think of search strategies, where will I search? Selecting, think, oh, this could be relevant for me, and then the actual work comes here during processing and synthesizing the information from multiple sources, now including AI-generated information, to create some form of knowledge product, which could be an essay like this presentation for today, or maybe a systematic literature review, which is a very complex information problem. So when Google came along and search engines, it mainly influenced how we search and access information. Before we go to libraries, now wow, we have the internet. Later on with social media, how we select and critically evaluate information became more urgent because anyone could publish information on the internet. It was not a curated set anymore, like in a library. But now, genAI can actually pervasively influence this whole process, from initial orientation, but also can help you transform it into different language, synthesize information from multiple sources, and create whole products for you. So this could leave educators like, how? What on earth should we teach now? Should we continue teaching about Boolean operators, keywords, and normal source evaluation like we did before? Or maybe should we switch to prompting? Well, a little spoiler alert, there is way more to it than just prompting. So, our question was, what then is, what constitutes this process of AI-assisted information problem solving? And we try to open this black box through our two questions. The first one, what are the phases and activities of this process? So the 6 phases I showed to you before, does it still work like that? Will it be different? And within these phases, what are the cognitive activities that the students actually perform? And then we had novices and experts, so we wanted to compare what's the difference between how novices and experts execute this process. We need this information in order to know what students still need to learn and where we need them to give some support. So our study design, in order to answer these questions, we gave them an authentic task of creating a lesson on social media use. We gave it to 14 first-year pre-service teachers who had to do this task for one of their courses and actually give the lesson to their students. We also had 12 experts, those were experienced teachers who were also savvy in AI. Those served as the experts. we did an in-depth analysis of their think aloud protocols of this 16-minute tasks, complemented with retrospective cued interviews. So we played the think aloud back and asked some clarifying questions on the strategy used, but also about their motivation for the behavior they show. So, ta-da! Here is the DIPS model, a process decomposition of the phases and cognitive activities involved in digital information problem solving using both the internet and genAI. We won't go into every detail here, you can ask me later, but the biggest thing you see here, okay, like the flower, the phases haven't changed. In essence, it's just a tool, but it did influence some specific phases. For example, in the search phase, now you see adapt input was a new activity. It was always important. You also had to adapt your keywords, but now with prompting, it becomes more and more important that we also teach when and how to adapt your prompt when you don't get what you like. For source evaluation, in prior models it was emphasized, evaluate the source and the information. But now we see experts also evaluate the tool. I will give you an example later. It also is for the processing phase, you're critically evaluating not only the information, but also the tool. When is AI hallucinating? When maybe should I start a new chat? And in the synthesis phase, we added a new component of verifying information. I don't know why it was not there in prior models. It has always been important, but now even more so. Because of these hallucinations, and even without them, sometimes AI makes claims, and if you really read the source, even if the source exists, sometimes it doesn't really match. And then lastly, also in the create phase, revision of AI output, for example, not only your own output, and considering the ethics. So let me give you some examples. These are the think aloud quotes from our experts. So during the select phase, that means the evaluation, the first evaluation of the sources, here you see a quote where the expert actually evaluates the tool. I mean, it switched to English. I asked for Dutch sources in the Dutch language. What's happening here? So you're also evaluating the tool behavior. And during the create phase, this teacher wondered, should I tell my students this info comes from Perplexity, or should I just say it comes from experts? So there's also some ethical aspects in using the AI-generated output in your own creations. So let's now go to the battle between novice and experts. Because of course we wanted to know what's the difference between them. I don't know if you already have some prior idea. What could be the big difference between how novice go through this whole process with AI and experts? Let's see. So, one more. This is my novice drawing summary of the prototypical novice. You have a task. You don't have a problem. You don't have an information problem anymore. Can you work out this task in every slide for me? A little bit black and white. We will do some nuancing. So we see that the novices actually go from the search, they jump right to create. So they ask, please make this for me. And then they select parts of that, they copy paste an aspect they like, maybe they fine tune a little bit, and they go back and forth between selecting information and putting it in their final product. Skipping essential phases like processing in depth and synthesizing information. Also interesting to notice that for most of them, ChatGPT was just their help for any task. So they had their one assistant, which was ChatGPT, and that's it. So what about the experts? We see the experts actually use a larger variation of tools. For example, ChatGPT, Claude, and Perplexity sometimes to go to more academic sources, and many others like Canvas for design and stuff. So we see a larger array of tools. We see that they really spend time on all the phases of the information problem solving, including the regulation of their own process and their AI use. And then also in the prompts we see big differences. Usually the prompts are a little bit longer, and often they even ask, base your answer on recent research. That doesn't mean the experts will then trust the output. but it will increase the chances of the model being nudged to using a little bit more trustworthy sources, but then still they would be critical about the output, like, the language of this is too difficult for my students, that's more based on the form, and the other one you saw before, like, these sources are in Dutch, I wanted some sources from the local context. So I think that's a big difference. And a big difference, they also used AI to help them with the regulation of the process. So in this case, we see an example of the evaluation of the product they made. So for example, they uploaded their lesson into AI and then asked, okay, this was for 40-year-olds, they give some context, do you have tips for me for improvement? So that's also a big difference. This is also supported by some more quantitative data. It's probably a lot to capture, you can ask questions later, but we do see here, if we compare the no visits, which are the left boxes, with the no visits left and the right is the experts. So, and the upper bar is when they use AI generated information. So you see in the select phase, for example, the novices spend more time selecting AI generated information than the experts. And also we see that the experts spend more time during the process, synthesize and define phase. And if you ask me, those will be the critical phases to teach our students. Define, what do you actually want to know and why, for whom, what's your idea? And really processing and synthesizing, not only like regular internet information, but here we see that the experts take more time to also process the AI generated information. And I think that would be also very nice to see if we have some classroom interventions, maybe even printing out some outputs and doing regular interventions on reading with this kind. Then let's go to how they execute the phases. So here you see, like, oh, in Holland we had teletext before, it was a screen, it was showed on your TV when it didn't work. It looked a little bit like this. But the colors, they match to the 6 phases of the process. And what we see here is that the experts have an iterative process. They go back and forth between all the phases, and especially important, the AI use starts very late. Whereas the novice starts quite early with the AI use and is heavily busy with creating, that is green, it's creation. But this one is at-risk student. High AI literacy in terms of instrumental skills, low domain knowledge. Heavily relying on AI throughout the process, going back and forth between the orange select and the green create, just being so reliant on the AI. And you could say, oh, this is so AI literate student? I don't think so. So that student is really at risk of cognitive offloading. We also see that the experts also regulate their AI use. So we could propose a new layer of regulation here. For example, when do you open a new chat? When do you think I will go to AI? When do you start using it? Maybe when you're stuck, for example. And also, what does it do with your process? So do you realize what it will do when you will use AI and then choose whether to use it or not? And I think if we would use it in such a critical way, really the human and machine can become more and better information problem solvers. And we could talk about collaborative human AI information problem solving. So, what would we need to move forward? I think the DIPS model could really offer a language and a structure for defining our learning outcomes on critical information problem solving. So no, we will not only teach prompting, we will also have to pay so much attention to teaching critical evaluation and verification of AI generated output, but also its ethical use in the own products of the students. They will not learn it through discovery learning. These students who are the participants, they have been using AI some for a year or 2 years. These, in my study at least, were not very critical. So we really have to guide them towards becoming more critical AI users. And of course, in order to do that, we have to visualize the invisible process. And I hope the model can serve as a basis to also make some assessment instruments, formative assessments, to make the process more visible so we can guide our students towards more critical AI use during such information problem solving tasks. Because I think the question is not whether our students should use AI, but more how we will equip them to use it wisely, critically, and ethically. And we're already busy working on some new publications on assessing critical AI use and teaching. We are really open to collaboration, so if you have any idea or you want to work together, let me know. And thank you so much.
Okay, thank you very much, Josien, for this very interesting presentation, evoking. And are there any questions so far? Any questions?
Or ideas?
Please.
Yeah, I wonder how do you deal with the frustration of not understanding exactly the mechanism of AI and having to regulate and to edit content coming from AI without like fully understanding how did it came to give such answer or such information?
And I understand correctly that you would experience that as a frustration, not knowing that.
Or or challenge, or we can use
The challenge.
any word.
Yeah, I think it's a big challenge. I've discussed with people here, is it the source of information or not? Because we don't know exactly how it's generated, and that's why we should always be suspicious and see, okay, can we verify this? We can use our prior knowledge. If you're a total expert, like the expert has such a high prior knowledge, they can more or less rely on that for evaluating the output. For the beginning students, that's very risky. And we see many students just rely on their prior knowledge for seeing, oh, I recognize this. Oh, I think this is correct. But they don't actually have the expertise to judge that. So I think even if they would be aware of the question you're asking, that's already one step forward. That you realize that it's totally not the same as another type of source. Because you don't really know how it's been made, but it could help maybe if we teach them more about how this works, how these data models are trained, how the statistics works and stuff. So that could be a nice next step, I think, if anyone likes to do this research with me. What is the effect of an intervention on teaching, like metacognitive knowledge on how AI works, on their trust and use and evaluation of these outputs? But yeah, thank you. I hope it answers you.
Yeah, thank you. Are there other questions so far? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the talk. I was wondering, do you think it's a good way to work with AI if the experts only use it for like very late in the process and only for a specific part of it? Or would it be advisable that the experts would start using it a bit more overall the whole process, maybe not too reliant, but not only on a single point late in the task?
I think I showed one prototypical experts. I do have to admit that the experts showed more variations. So also some experts used it at the beginning. So I do think it's good to know the affordances of AI in all these 6 phases. But personally, I think during the define phase, where you think, what do I want to know or what do I want to produce, the real difference between the experts and the novice, the expert takes so much time to think, a lesson in social media, that's way too broad, they will find it boring. What do they use? They look it up, they use TikTok now. We hang it on to TikTok. Those, if I just send information, they will think it's boring. So let's do an interactive activity. Whereas the first year pre-service teachers, they followed the ideas, then got a whole PowerPoint full of text, and then thought, oh, I should add visuals now because they will fall asleep. So I think the first phase, define, should be dominated by the human. I think the search, all the other, that can always be assisted by AI, but the processing and synthesis should have a large human component, because even if it's AI generated output, for example, if you transform it into the language of my students, you also really process the content deeply. So otherwise you might have the risk that you don't know what you're talking about anymore. But I think you're right, you should be able to use it in any phase and then strategically decide when that is relevant or not, depending on your goals. Sometimes you don't want to learn as an expert from a task. I have a lesson tomorrow, I need to finish it in 30 minutes. So it depends really on the goal, I think. Yeah.
Are there questions maybe? Some questions left? Then I would say big applause for Josien.
Okay, thank you very